One of the most impactful pieces of news regarding the launch of F1 25 is that it will not be released on last-gen consoles, thus leaving behind PlayStation 4 and Xbox One players. And I want to start the video by being very clear about this. I hope no one misinterprets me, but it's something that had to happen. And in fact, it didn't have to happen now. It should have happened a long time ago, back in 2022. Now, obviously, I have nothing against last-gen players, but the reality is that it's a burden. And last-gen users know this, even if it hurts, but they know it's holding things back. If we want a game to take a step forward, we can't keep catering to the limitation of consoles that were released 12 years ago. Because there comes a point when the new generation of consoles is well established in the market, and it's essential to leave the old ones behind in order to improve graphics, loading times, features, optimization, and overall performance. That said, this decision has been quite controversial and confusing with the community, because there are things that are hard to understand. This step, moving on from old-gen consoles, is natural and necessary, but some things just don't make sense and are completely inconsistent with what we are going to see next. To understand this better, we need to go back to a very clear precedent. On July 10, 2015, Codemasters released Formula 1 2015. That game featured an update to the Ego engine, which brought a clear leap forward in both performance and graphics compared to what we saw in Formula 1 2014. That update laid the groundwork for the future games. And it's obvious when you look at it. If you watch gameplay from F1 2014 and then F1 2015, you say, wow. And it's not just the graphics, which were the first thing to catch your eye, of course. But there was also a major overhaul in terms of features, gameplay and mechanics. It was a big change. At that time, they left behind PS3 and Xbox 360 players, and despite the criticism, which did exist obviously, I applauded the move because, honestly, it was necessary, just as it's necessary today. Of course, it was kind of a sacrifice, leaving behind many players in exchange for significant improvements to the game. And up to this point, everything is perfectly fine. It's a natural thing that both current-gen and old-gen users need to understand, especially those who constantly complain that the game never changes. If we want change, we need to understand that some things have to be done. But like I said, everything was fine up to this point. However, there's a problem, and there's a misunderstanding that the F1 community is not fully grasping. F1 2025 is leaving behind PlayStation 4 and Xbox One players, that's clear. But the issue is that it seems that we are not getting anything remotely close to what we got in 2015 in return. Now, to be fair, in 2025 we can expect the kind of graphical leap we saw from 2014 to 2015, of course, because there was still a lot of room for improvement back then. But today, we are already close to visual excellence, so such a leap is much harder. Even so, improvements don't have to be purely visual. They can come in other areas, and that's what I'm also analyzing in this video. There's a graphical improvement in F1 25, as seen in the short I uploaded the other day, and if you haven't seen it, I recommend you check it out. In that short, we compared onboard footage from the Alpine in F1 24 at Suzuka with footage from F1 25, and yes, there is an improvement. The F1 25 version looks better. All of this, of course, within the narrow margin for improvement that we can expect in 2025, where visuals are already highly polished. But let me give you an example. F1 2019. In my opinion, F1 2019 is the best game in the series. It improved a lot graphically, added new modes and mechanics. It was a masterpiece. And it didn't require a graphics engine change or dropping a large player base. And that's the key, in my opinion. F1 25, although it might be a good game with nice improvements, still maintains the foundation of the older games, the foundation of a past generation. And what we actually wanted was the opposite, to break that base and rebuild the game from a fresh start, eliminating bugs and errors, which are honestly among the game's biggest issues today. And right away, that causes confusion, because yes, I support this change. I support it if it's not in vain. Everyone expected a shift to a new-gen graphics engine. But that's clearly not what we've gotten with F1. Codemasters says they've continued improving their engine this year, but my question is, how much performance and tech from 2025 and current-gen consoles can you really expect if you're still using an engine that had its last major update in 2015? Even if you've dropped support for the old consoles, you're still building the game on the same base as last year, when those old consoles were still part of the equation, so to speak. Of course, by dropping those consoles, you eliminate the technical limitations going forward, and that's clearly beneficial in the long run. But again, the real issue is how much potential for performance and improvements are you wasting by not switching to a new engine, or at least massively upgrading the current one. I've seen people saying, but there are technical improvements this year, the system requirements are higher. Well, let's take a look. Compare the requirements for F1 2014 to F1 2015, when there was a significant engine update. You will notice a clear leap. That was a significant step up. And now, let's compare requirements for F1 24 and F1 25. So, here you have. The key point here, in my opinion, is this. The recommended system requirements for F1 24 and F1 25 are identical. And yes, we are at the point where these are very powerful GPUs, and maybe it's not necessary to ask for even more. Fair enough, that's valid. But even so, if there had been any significant change to the engine, I think we would be seeing at least some change in the specs, even a small one. In fact, there were bigger spec changes between F1 22 and F1 23 than we're seeing now in F1 25, so that should give you an idea of what I'm getting at here. Still, we'll have to wait and see how the final product turns out, because if the game launches and fixes the bugs, addresses major issues, and improves gameplay enough to make it more enjoyable, and on top of that adds meaningful updates to the game modes, then I will say, okay, fair enough, dropping last-gen consoles had a positive effect. So I'm going to wait until I have the game in my hands and can properly analyze it. There's still a little hope that dropping old-gen has helped remove some technical baggage that was holding the game back, things we might not even be aware of. Anyway, that's everything I wanted to say about why I think Codemasters and Electronic Arts decided to leave behind last-gen consoles. And this also means sacrificing a lot of potential sales and revenue. We have to think about that too. This is a company, and like any company, it wants money. And they are leaving behind a huge part of the market, so there must be a reason behind it. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this in the comments, and if you like the video, a like would be much appreciated. That's all from me for now. See you in the next one.